That's Giraffe Neck Mark, co-host of the Mets Stuff podcast, and we're coming at you to break down your hottest Mets takes for the 2024 season. Are we buying? Are we selling them? That is what we're getting into. Also, apologies in advance if the video quality is a little down versus what it usually is. Wi-Fi is kicking me in the butt right now, but we got to get the video done. This is like our 10th time trying, Mark, so we're getting into it. That is Giraffe Neck Mark. You guys know one of the biggest baseball YouTubers out there. Again, co-host there with James Shiano for the Mets Stuff podcast, and on his main channel, Mark is known for these buy or sell segments, and I was thinking, let's just do it Mets related. So over the past week, I had you guys tweet out to me and give me your hottest takes, and we broke down, we have at least 5 or so that we're going to get into in this one. So Mark, any remarks you'd like to share before we get into it?
Yeah, I mean, third time's a charm, right? We're going to get this one going. We're going to be ready to say buy or sell on some takes here, and excited to be probably overly optimistic about the Mets this year.
Yes, inevitably. If it isn't overly optimistic just for heartbreak, it is a Mets fandom. So let's start with our first take here, and this comes from someone that I know quite well, actually one of the first editors I've ever had, going back to when I did hockey content years ago, and that is Core Python here on Twitter. Says Brandon Nimmo has his first 30 home run season. This is the same Brandon Nimmo that had a career high in home runs, over 20 this past year. So Mark, take it away. Are you buying or selling on this one?
Dude, I'm buying this 100%. And listen, it's not like a guarantee. Like, I don't think Brandon Nimmo is guaranteed to hit 30 home runs. But in terms of, like, bold takes, I love this one a lot because, like you said, career high in home runs last year. He's built like a moose. The dude is huge. Massive shoulders, big arms, big hands, super strong. And I love that he's moving from center field to left field. Now, that doesn't guarantee that more power is going to come just because he's not playing center field anymore. But I think the idea that Brandon Nimmo is going to have less wear and tear on his body almost allows him to become a little bit of a different player now playing in the corner outfield. That swing, like when he attacks, he has power. He can hit the ball hard to all fields. There's no reason he can't hit 30 home runs as long as he has a healthy season. Knocking on all the wood.
Yeah, seriously. And I agree with you. I'm buying on this too, not only because I want to happen, but we've seen the stretches with Brandon, right? It just sometimes he gets a little sporadic that we've seen where, oh my goodness, he's lighting it up for 2 weeks like DJ Stewart last year, and then you don't see any power for the next like two and a half months. It's non-existent. However, Brennan showcases power better than ever before last year, and I think especially with Carlos Mendoza in the reins and Tyrone Taylor, I really think there's going to be opportunities where Brandon Nimmo is not batting leadoff. I think the Mets are going to start to mix things up a little bit more this year, and that too is where that power element can be huge. Instead of being your leadoff guy, you're going to have potentially more situations where Brandon, if he's a little bit deeper in the order, where there are a couple guys on, and then bam, that's where he can really emphasize not just getting on base like the king that he is, pointing up to the sky, but this time actually driving one out. Because especially in today's game, if this Mets core group has learned anything over the past couple of years, it is that power is what's going to carry you. So if anyone's going to have more power in their game, I'm all for Brandon Nimmo being that guy. Great take there by Core Python. We're drinking up the juice, even though it's probably not going to happen. But now let's get into one from also another good friend of mine, another fellow editor, and that actually is Carson here. Carson says, Edwin Diaz will exceed his 2022 K rate of 50.2%. Now, Carson loves getting into the advanced numbers. That is his thing, especially both on pitching and hitting, and he is obsessed with Edwin Diaz. He's raving over him so far this spring. So, as remarkable of a season that he had in 2022, do you think you can buy or sell him having a higher K rate than that season?
Oh, Carson. I love the optimism, but I can't buy that one. Like 50% K rate is video game numbers. I don't even know if you can do that in a video game with Edwin Diaz. Like playing on Hall of Fame on MLB The Show. Going to be tough. I don't see it happening, but it's not because there's going to be this huge drop off. I think he's still going to be in that 40% range. It's just matching arguably one of the best seasons a closer has ever had in Major League Baseball is going to be impossible coming off of the knee injury. Like, I have no concerns about his ability to still be dominant, his ability to still be the best closer in the game. It's just, I don't want to put those lofty expectations on a guy who hasn't pitched in a meaningful game in over a year. So for me, I unfortunately have to sell this one, but I love the optimism. I hope I'm wrong.
So I think because of the fact that Edwin just did this the last time he pitched is why I can buy into it. So I'm actually buying this, all right? I'm on this wave. I really am, because Edwin has looked fantastic to start spring. We all know that. All the batters, I mean, you're seeing Francisco Lindor just giggle if he gets any type of contact off of him. So clearly the guys know that Edwin is back and locked in. And yes, to your point, It is an amazing season that he had that is so hard to replicate, especially after a significant injury. But if anyone's going to do it, Edwin Diaz is the type of pitcher to do it because he's already done it. So whether he gets in that 50% range or close to or above, I really think he's not going to be terribly far off. So for those reasons, I'm actually going to buy that one there. Probably a little bit too optimistic, but as we get into some of these other takes, I'm very much more a pessimist. So shout out, as always, to our amazing sponsor here on the channel at BetUS, America's #1 sports book. They're safe, they're secure, they're reliable. And I don't just know that because I'm working with them. I know that because I've heard the feedback from you, the viewers, since BetUS has been a sponsor on the channel, because they've been here for a little bit now. I've heard a lot of positive feedback, especially through Twitter. I've heard from some comments on YouTube as well. A lot of positive work what they've done, and ultimately the odds that they've taken, whether they're hammering the money lines, you know, the overs, the unders for their their parlays, you know, whatever type betting that you guys have been seeking so far has looked very good, whether it's for NHL in season action, NFL in season action, up until the Super Bowl this past weekend where a lot of you guys hit big. But also, guys, click the link in the description to get in on the action today, because you get a 125% bonus, not with your first deposit, but now your first 3 deposits, as long as you also put in promo code JOIN125, JOIN125, JOIN125 for your first 3 deposits at a 125% boost. That means if you deposit $100, you automatically get $225 to work with, and then you can do that times 3. It is that easy. Shout out to BetUS as always for being an amazing sponsor on the channel. Starting with this one, as a matter of fact, and that comes from Painstan at Yankees Lose 123 on Twitter. Says Christian Scott climbs out of the minors and becomes the ace of the Mets rotation. For those that don't know Christian Scott, I spoke on him recently in Joe DeMayo's top 10 prospect rankings on the channel a couple weeks ago. Check it out. And Scott is easily deemed by many already now as the top pitching prospect in the organization after what he did last year. It was utterly phenomenal. So question for you, Mark, are you buying or selling Christian Scott?
Drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm buying this one. I'm buying this one. There's a little bit of a caveat here. One, worried about Kodai. Kodai is the ace. Worried about what's going on with him. I don't know how much he's going to pitch right now. We'll see how he feels when he comes back. No rush. No rush for Kodai to come back. That being said, Christian Scott, listen, my podcast co-host James has been raving about this guy for the last 3 months. Every time I talk to him, Christian Scott, I think this is going to be the one. I think this is going to be the guy. And people around the league are starting to get hip to Christian Scott. Like the ability that he has shown to not only improve, but add new pitches to his repertoire. He added the sweeper. He's got the slider. He's got the great fastball. There's all these things that make you believe that Christian Scott can not only be just a front end starter, but maybe that possible ace. So am I being a little aggressive that he's going to turn to the ace this year? For sure. But I love the take of that. Christian Scott, I think, will be in the rotation at some point this year. And there's a world where you're going to watch him pitch a couple games and go, yeah, this is the best pitcher on the entire staff. And I don't think that's out of the possibility.
It's really amazing how far he's come in such a short period of time. Over this past calendar year, Christian Scott has taken over the Mets minor leagues by storm. And as awesome as that's been, I'm selling this every single day of the week for the sole purpose of Tyler McGill, Jose Buto, Joey Lucchesi, Max Kranick. That's why. You got 4 horsemen in front of Christian. Really, even before Mike Vassell, actually, the Mets might consider before even Scott, just for the sake of maybe not wanting to hurt development. So I know that this is the year for the Mets where you want to see what you have in some of these guys. But I think as awesome as Christian Scott was last year, and while I agree he has that potential, I just don't think we're going to get anywhere close to that this year. Because we're also bearing in mind, Senga, as long, again, God willing, knock on wood, because this is every spring, he should be back in May, at some point in May, right? You're only a month and a half potentially, or not even, without your ace. So as long as Senga returns and pitches the way we know he can, that is ultimately going to be our ace for the rotation. So even if Scott gets called up and does well, I don't foresee him doing better than Senga. So again, multiple variables go into it. I love it. It's fun, but I'm selling it for now. So now, I'm sorry, but hey, this next one, a little different. And that comes from Dr. Kars, and that is at Anobi's Goat on Twitter. Says, shout out to OG, please get healthy. Please start shooting. We need you, Knicks fans, you know. Tyler McGill blossoms into a true solid back-end starter. Now, McGill, many believe, is kind of the guy leading the way this spring for that back-end rotation spot as is, with Kodai Senga being down. So how do you feel about this? Are you buying or selling?
I'm going to buy it from the fact that Tyler McGill has to. If the Mets want any sort of success this year, they're going to need some consistency, like you said, out of those 4 guys that are kind of going to be filling in that last spot in the rotation right now, especially with Senga down. And Tyler McGill, relatively speaking, for his career, there's been a lot of ups, there's been a lot of downs. He needs this year just as much as the Mets do too, because he's a guy moving forward who wants to be a solidified major league starting pitcher. And if we have another season like we did last year or the year before, where it's a little bit iffy, the consistency is all over the place, you're just going to look for other options. So what we saw in spring training, incredibly early, the fastball looked great. He's trying out that new American spork, as he's calling it, which I think is a good pitch to add to his repertoire, since his slider isn't really that good so far. I mean, it looked pretty good in the spring, but it's not one of his main best pitches. I think he has to do it. I think he will do it. I'm going to believe in Tyler McGill. He's stepped up in situations when we've needed him before. It feels like when his back's up against the wall, that's when he's best. And right now, it feels like he's got a little bit of pressure on him. So if he wants to be a dog, this is his chance. So I'm going to buy it.
Right. I think this is really the make or break year for Tyler McGill and the organization in certain ways, right? So for him to step up will be huge, obviously. We know that he has been in multiple situations the past couple of years where it's like, all right, I have to step up right away when I wasn't planning to initially, you know, being our opening day starter and almost touching a hundo on the gun, just mind-blowing us all. But he's dialed it back a little bit, but now he's trying to have a fine-tuned arsenal and hopes that American sport can, again, kind of be his put-out pitch. That's something that he struggled with a lot, especially last year. His breaking ball, he didn't have the command in it in spring, didn't have it at all heading into the season. That was just a continued problem. So he's changed up the arsenal a little bit. That's great. Hopefully we can see more swing and miss, higher whiff rates with this. But McGill versus the other options the Mets currently have, I probably have upwards of the most faith in him, where at least I know what I'm going to get at the absolute worst. And at the absolute best, I know that this is a guy that can easily give the Mets a solid 4 to 5 innings, but then it's from there. You know, it's that not only the second, but that third time in the order. That's where you really start to see trouble. So Tyler McGill, yes, I'm going to buy that as well, but I think in a lot of ways that this is going to be a big make or break year for him on his future in the rotation versus potentially being a lone reliever or even potentially dealt. So we'll see what the future is of Tyler McGill's this season. And to wrap things up, we have a spicy take. It's probably the spiciest one. It's sizzling right now. And that is from Jenny Metz, that may you guys know very well. Hey. Mark Vientos will hit 30 plus home runs. Marky V, as things currently stand, looks like he's going to be the Mets' primary DH this season. To what degree is he going to split time with someone like DJ Stewart? We have yet to find out. But how do you feel? Mark Vientos, are you buying or selling on 30 plus bombs?
Marky L over here is going to be selling this one on Marky V. I think I've been probably a little too negative on Mark Vientos this offseason. I don't think it's fair to him. He hasn't really ever gotten a true shot, and he does do things that I like other players doing, which is he hits the ball hard. When he hits the ball in the air, it goes really far. Like, he has the raw tools to be a successful major league player. We just haven't really seen him given the opportunity or just the experience to show that yet. That being said, I'm selling it because I don't necessarily know how much playing time he's going to get this year. To me, he seems like the obvious choice right now to be pushed out. He has that option. They have DJ Stewart with the left-handed bat. Maybe a guy like Luke Voigt can take over and be that platoon in the DH spot, as well as Vientos just really doesn't have much of a position. Like, I don't think he's going to be a third baseman moving forward. At worst, he's a backup or at best, he's like the backup first baseman to Pete. And there's just options with major league experience that I think the Mets are going to give a shot to earlier on, especially because Vientos has that options where these guys, if you don't give it to them, they're going to go somewhere else. They're going to find another team. So for me, it's a combination of playing time and also 30 home runs is a lot for Mark Vientos to hit. Like, that would be crazy. If Mark Vientos hits 30 home runs, the teams win the World Series. I'll say that right now.
Lock it in.
Lock it in. 30 home runs, World Series.
Just because of that ridiculous optimism, we're buying it. We're buying it, but we're only buying it if he gets at least like 550 plate appearances. Okay? So, like, totally. I'm buying it if he gets a full workload, which he's likely not going to. So, you know, you can add it together, but Mark Vientos has shown the power. Him and Brett Beatty alike, what they have in common is not only a great friendship and, you know, similar personalities at times, but it's also their ability to lift the ball tremendously at the AAA level, and at the MLB level, they've had their fair share of struggles. Beatty's been to a higher magnitude than Vientos for sure, but both of them are these quad A players where as soon as they're sent down, they're quite literally the best player in the league, and then as soon as they're back up, they haven't been able to get properly comfortable. Now, Vientos, what separates him is as soon as he makes contact, he's one of the the hardest hitters in all Major League Baseball. We know the power's there, so that isn't a concern with him. It's just really about how consistent can he be with his barrel rate, obviously, limiting the swing and miss, you know, not chasing as much, which is a hard thing to do for a young, excited slugger. Even with Alvarez, with his north of 30 bombs, still striking out at a solid clip too. So I think give him a heavy amount of workload. If this is a year that you're going to really see what you have at Mark Vientos, do exactly that. And hey, let's see. Maybe we're going to get 30 bombs out of the guy. You know, crazier
I'd love
things
to be
have
wrong.
happened.
Love to be wrong on this one as well. Like, prove me wrong, Mark Vientos. Put it in the put it in your locker. Draft Neck Mark says I won't hit 30 home runs. If that's what it takes, I'm happy to absolutely die on this take.
Right. And hey, if he doesn't, then I'll just be like, really wasn't realistic to begin with.
Exactly.
It was a spicy take. So
it's a hot take video.
Exactly. And speaking of a hot take video, that is going to conclude said video. So I want to thank everyone so much that checked this one out. Let us know what is your hottest take for the Mets 2024 season down below, and which one out of the 5 do you agree, disagree with most. We'd love to hear it. And again, guys, if you haven't already, please make sure to check out Mark at the Mets Up podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on the Giraffe Neck Mark YouTube channel. Thank you so much as always, brother. Any final remarks?
Nah, thanks for having me on, man. This was fun, and hopefully we get to do it again later in the year.
Yeah, sounds great. Maybe we'll actually get to the halfway mark of the season and see how hot those were at that point, if they're adding up or if they're looking bad. So we'll come back to this. Thank you guys again. Stay tuned for consistent coverage on all things Mets all season long. That's Giraffe Neck Mark. This is WardyNYM. We'll talk to you again real soon. Peace out.